Today, I will be doing another state's top 10, and today's version will be the state of Florida. Now, Florida has many great roller coasters and is one of the best coaster states, and I've been lucky enough to been to most theme parks and rides in that state. Now, there is one big caveat being that I haven't been to Busch Gardens Tampa, which has a lot of amazing rides and are all honorable mentions on this list. But other than that, I've been to all major parks in the state other than Busch Gardens, so other than that, let's just hop right in. This ride is last place, but it's still a quality ride, and that is Thunder Mountain. This is for sure the least intense ride on this list, but when it comes to pure theming, it's one of the best in the world. The man-made island that it sits on is spectacular and looks so real. Then the queue line swerving through the inside of the mining company is really cool and special, having so many Easter eggs to look through the entire experience. Then the ride itself is a fun coaster with a couple of small turns and hills that last forever. Like, actually forever. It has 3 lift hills to continue the ride going for, I don't even know how long, probably like 3 minutes. And weaving through the different structures that take place in the mountain is very cool too. The mountain is old, but always a good ride when you're visiting the Orlando area. Next up is Kraken. Kraken, in my mind, is one of those rides that's just pretty mid. I don't have a problem with loopers if they're done correctly, and this one just really isn't. It's just a lot of boring back-to-back inversions that hundreds of other coasters offer on B&M's worst and least interesting model. Even though I do think the ride is pretty mid, it has some good qualities like the first drop being straight, meaning that with those open B&M over-the-shoulder restraints, you actually get solid airtime. Then the 0G roll, which is actually very fun, and the 2 loops, even though generic, provides some pretty solid G's to the ride. It's a one and done for me, not good, not bad, just middle of the pack ride that you can find all of America and probably the world. A surprise ride that a lot of you hate but I love is Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. Rip Ride Rocket may be close to the end of its life and gets a lot of hate from the majority of the community, but this ride is fun and I mean it. On my ride, the 35 mid-courses didn't hit, meaning that all the drops off had amazing airtime. A very underrated aspect of this ride is that all the turns and twists are actually very fun and have some good intensity to them. Not like 4Gs crushing your body, but some variety of forces to mix up the ride for you. Plus, the gimmick of the music is a fun twist to make the ride different for each rider without anything dumb or stupid. And the non-inverting loop is a top 5 element that I've been on too, and it is so fun throwing you out of your seat while twisting you at the same time. It's just so fun, man. You just gotta re-ride it. Spot 7 goes to Icebreaker. Icebreaker was hyped up to be the second best ride at SeaWorld Orlando, but it just didn't hit that hard for me. Don't get me wrong, it's still a fun ride, but it's personally the 4th best ride in the park. But for a quote-unquote family ride, it's pretty good. You start off with a swing launch with 4 launches. Before I rode Icebreaker, I was never able to get on a swing launch roller coaster, and it's pretty cool and unique because it just slowly builds up speed while getting some good ejector airtime pops. Then you fly into the top hat with great airtime and hit the pops of floater that are very low to the ground. These are fun and I thought would have been the best part of the ride, but kinda fell flat. Even though the comfort collars are gone, the train's still stuck and restrict your movement so much, and is a bottom 3 train ever created. 6th place is the Incredible Hulk. The first ride to miss out on the top 5 is one that a lot of people would have there in the heartbeat, but it really just doesn't get in the top 5 for me. But I can appreciate that this thing is a pure positives machine and the inversions are bone crushing. You start off with the underrated launch that has much power to it because of the incline in the tunnel. Then you fly onto one of my favorite inversions of all time, the 0G roll, which is dangerously whippy and snappy. Then you fall into the Cobra Roll, Loop, which are back-to-back intense moments, and it's common for many people to black out. Not quite for me, but a lot of people do. Now, after the mid-course, it does die down a little bit, not being as intense as the first half, but the first half is world-class, and the old-school restraints are pretty good, even though they do have slight headbanging. I love all the rides coming up next, and this state is just so stacked and so good, and the fact that I had a hard time ranking the top 5 even without going to Busch Gardens is crazy. But the first ride of the top 5 goes to... The first of the next 5 on the list is Manta. I personally love flyers, and Manta is the definition of a near-perfect flyer with all the elements and moments that make it so good. You load up into the train, and it actually scares me every time, because you just load up into the train like usual, sitting straight up, and then it rotates down, making you feel like you're just gonna fall on your face every single time. But the first element of the ride is the pretzel loop, and it's just an insane moment and a crazy way to start off the ride. So many positive G's, and just collapsing onto yourself is just a super weird, and I don't even know how to describe it. Just being on your back is just so weird. But after that, the ride is not really that intense at all. You kind of just fly smoothly through some high in the sky inversions, then drop down into some pretty fun low to the ground / water turns. Plus, flying over the pathways and looking down and seeing everybody down below is just so cool to me for some reason, and I just find it entertaining every time. Pipeline slides in at the 4th spot. This ride, being that it's a stand-up coaster, and the fact that the previous stand-ups were all pretty bad, made me skeptical, but this thing is so fun, and there aren't really any other rides like it so far. The trains actually bounce up and down, like for example, when you go through an airtime hill, it actually bounces up, or when you hit a turn, it actually lowers down to allow for some comfort for the rider. The ride starts off with a great launch that is surprisingly powerful and has a great pop of airtime. You then ride through a layout that is filled with not inversions, but actually airtime hills and intense turns. All the airtime is very fun, being mostly ejector airtime, and then to mix up the forces at the end, throwing in some intense turns with some quality G's that are actually pretty sustained. A very good stand-up coaster, and I hope more of these pop up around the world. Up next is Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventures. Even though it's a family ride, it's one of the best all-time, 0 questions. Also, a bit of a hot take of mine, but I think that this is the most diverse ride of all time. It has every single ride element imaginable all in one coaster. It has a world record 7 launches to keep the ride going, a secret spike, and a surprisingly long backward section, and a drop track that gets me every time. That combined with not only the impeccable queue line with the hidden details, but the on-ride theming with just so many things to look at all the time. And the overall story of the ride going to the Forbidden Forest, seeing all the creatures found there is so cool and has so much charm to it. One of my personal favorites, and I would say that it's a classic. Second place is Mako. Mako is a very good ride, but sadly could not get its way to the #1 spot. Even though I think this ride is very good, it does have some problems holding it back. Like, the first half of the ride is the only fun part of the ride for me, since after the mid-course it just dies, and the turns at the end, even though are a great spectacle, are very boring on ride. I wish that it just somehow was able to pump more airtime hills in somehow to increase that airtime volume. But the first half is great, having many floaty airtime hills. You are just gliding on the track because of how smooth it is while getting some amazing floater airtime. Like, it's just 3 straight hills of some of the best floater that you can find, and that, with the combination of the amazing B&M clamshells, makes for an amazing time. But like I said, the second half is straight trash, and is holding the ride back from being in the #1 spot, but still a top 5 ride that I have been on overall. #1 is in contention for the best ride in the world, and that is Velocicoaster. This ride is truly one of a kind and amazing in every single way and has 0 flaws. The ride itself is excellent, but has some amazing theming in queue and on ride. The queue is littered with details, and the raptor enclosure is super cool to be passing by all the rocks and all the near-miss elements. But the ride is action-packed from start to finish. It has 2 launches, the second one being really good, like actually very good, and a very powerful launch for LSMs. Then you have some amazing elements like the top hat, outer bank 0G stall, wall stall, near-miss turns in the paddock, and of course the Mosasaurus roll, which is phenomenal, and probably the best element that I've been on. It lives up to the hype and is worth the price of admission alone for just one ride, and is seriously one of the best roller coasters ever created. Thanks for watching. Tell me your favorite roller coaster that comes from Florida, and other than that, have a phenomenal day.